This video is sponsored by Aquashine Exteriors, professional jet washing and cleaning services across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, including Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire. Are you feeling it's time to get that driveway nice and shiny for when you come home? Or are you wanting to get that guttering tidied up and spotless again? They deliver this, plus much, much more. Please head into the description below where you'll find their details for their website, including the socials, Facebook and Instagram. You also need to find their before and after portfolio. You can also call them on 07503 998 088 for a free quotation. Don't wait till next week. Don't think you'll do it another day. Pick up the phone, give them a call, check them out. Good evening, morning, wherever you're joining us from. We're live on YouTube and Twitter. But if you're on Twitter, head over to YouTube. You'll have a better interaction on this match preview of Bournemouth versus Southampton under the lights at Dean Court tomorrow night. If you're new to Cherries Red Army, please do subscribe. We'd also appreciate a like on this video. Let's set a 50 minimum likes. Can we get there before the game kicks off tomorrow night? If you weren't able to watch this video live, do get your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and we have a jam-packed show this evening because we're going to be talking about both teams. We'll look at both teams' results last weekend. We'll also have a bit of fun. Guess the player is back. You can get involved, and we have a friend of the channel joining us as a special guest, along with our Cherries Red Army guests as well. Let's get on with the preview, but there's one big question I need you to tell me straight away. Get your hellos in the chat. Is this a derby or not? Yes or no? Is it a derby? Let's get on with the preview.
Cheeky one, square, and
Here we go again in the Premier League. It's our stat man on Cherries Red Army, Jon Spark. How are you? Is it a derby or not?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Nice to put that one to me first thing. Thank you for that. I'd like to say it is, just because when you've got a team that's close to another team, and there are definite feelings towards each other, I would put it as a derby. But then Southampton fans will probably disagree that they have very strong feelings towards Bournemouth. So I don't know. It might be a bit one-sided, but I would still call it a derby.
Aaron, great to see you on Saturday at Craven Cottage. Limbs in the first half. How are you? Is it a derby or not?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I'd echo John, really. I mean, it is a derby. I think Southampton would probably, for them, it's certainly not the derby. I think that's pretty factual. For us, it is really the derby, I guess, because they're our closest geographically. But, you know, some would argue that we have a lot more needle with other clubs who are currently languishing in the Championship, for example. So, but yeah, no, look, it's a derby. It's a local derby. There might not be the hatred on both sides of things, but it's certainly a derby for me.
And our last guest on this match preview, he's a friend of the channel. He covered the Cherries for Dorset Live last season, now covering Southampton for The Athletic. He took the call. Jacob Tanswell, how are you? Is it a derby or not?
Hi, Kirk. Hi, everyone. Yeah, doing really well, thank you. If Bournemouth want to call it a derby, I think they're well within their rights to call it a derby. If they see it as a derby, then yeah, go ahead, enjoy it. Of course, like Aaron said, for Southampton, it's not. But there is, you know, let's be real here. There's a little bit of animosity, I think, in terms of Southampton just wanting to put, you know, the smaller neighbours back in their box. I think there is a little bit of discontent seeing Bournemouth higher on the table than them, given, you know, there seems to be a bit of a disparity in score quality from Southampton supporters' point of view. So, yeah, it's just about quieting Bournemouth down a little bit.
Jacob is at the game tomorrow. His details are in the description below. Do check him out. I know he covers Southampton this season, but for this game, he's covering both. So make sure you check him out. Who's joining us this evening on YouTube? We've got Chris Hubble. How are you? Mark Cole, Amanda Williams, Mark Singleton, Dan Chase. We've got David Codron from Melbourne. Good morning to you. We've got Woody Two Shoes. It's a derby for sure. Anyone else join us, do let us know in the chat. Heather's just popped in to say hi as well. We're also going to do Guess the Player. 60-second quiz will return on another match preview, but we'll bring back the Guess the Player with a twist. So this time, what we'll do is we'll provide a clue about every 10 or 15 minutes. And near the end of the show, I'm going to ask the guys if they can guess the player that usually has a link around this fixture between both teams. So let's kick it off with Guess the Player, guys, to get the first clue out. And the first clue for Guess the Player: this player has played for both AFC Bournemouth and Southampton. So if you need to make notes throughout the next hour, please do. That's your first clue. Don't give your answer in the chat. We'll come back to it later. But at the moment, this player played for both AFC Bournemouth and Southampton. This match preview, though, Bournemouth headed to Fulham on an away day for the fans, and fans were very confident, John, when I was speaking to them, and it was 2-2, a cracking game for the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would say probably on that match day, or certainly that day, that Saturday, given there were only 4 games, I'd say it was the standout fixture in terms of the result, in terms of the entertainment on offer. And I think in terms of looking at the two sides as promoted sides, they really did show what they're capable of in different ways. Fulham are a team that have definitely kept the momentum from last season. They look like a really, really positive side. They want to dominate possession, whereas Bournemouth have gone in the other direction. They've tried to adapt much more to the fact that their squad quality is not going to be anywhere near the level of the majority of the Premier League. So whilst I think our first 11 is certainly good enough, you have to adapt. And we showed what we can do on the counter. We showed our defensive resilience. And had it not been for, again, some refereeing decisions that, it's not the first time, won't be the last time we're on the end of things that, us as Bournemouth fans aren't going to agree with. We may well have got 3 points from that fixture. A point, though, is what a lot of us, I think, all thought we would get from that game. And a point, I think, was a good result all round, I would say.
Pegged back twice, Aaron. Very, very good goals that we scored. We were sort of then making sure we held on to the point at the end. Any point in this league, like I said on Saturday, is a very good point for the Cherries.
Yeah, it's a good point away from home. Fulham are very decent at home. I think certainly with Mitrovic, it makes a big difference. I was speaking to a Fulham fan today saying that without him, they really are in trouble. And the 2 fixtures where they lost him and they didn't have him, it does make a huge difference for them. But with him in the team, they've given got a very good home record. So it was a good point. We were saying at half time that we were 2-1 up. Obviously, it could have been 3-1 with Smudge's header, which was a brilliant double save from Leno, and of course Frederick's penalty. I mean, it's sounding like a broken record. I think there's been 7 VAR decisions we've been involved in this season, 7 or 8 or something like that, and we've lost every single one of them. Even to the extent that both on 2 occasions someone's been advised to go and change their mind and they still didn't, or vice versa. So. Look, he tugged him back, simple as that. And I think I think they were speaking about Haaland's tug on Fabinho for about half an hour. It wasn't, and it's we don't get any highlights about that at all. So it was hard done by. But we can talk about the Mitrovic penalty. I can see Gary O'Neill's point of view on that, and I can also see why clearly Graham Scott gave that. So it's one of those 50-50 ones where I don't think we can argue too much, because you're talking about the semantics of a fall. The fact is he had his arms around him and he wasn't looking at the ball. So, but yeah, all in all, I think the first half was great. It was a brilliant game. It was like a basketball match in some respects. We looked like carving them open every time we went forward. And they posed us problems. But second half, as you say, they tweaked things, did very well, and Kenny was dictating the game. And certainly that last 20 minutes was effectively hanging on, bar a couple of quick breaks. So delighted when the final whistle went in the end.
Jacob, I think Sammy's trying to keep up with this whilst at work. She says, "Evening, Jacob. Miss you." She'll watch it back. I'm sure of that. but more messages coming in for Jacob. Please do put them in there. Now, Jacob, you would have watched both Bournemouth and Fulham very closely last season, and you would have seen Dom Solanke have a very good game at Craven Cottage and score a wonderful goal. And he scored again inside 64 seconds, and he's starting to prove to the rest of the Premier League that he can play at this level. Was you impressed with Bournemouth Fulham on Saturday?
I've always said, I think I was having this chat with a few Southampton guys about Dom Solanke, and I said I think Southampton would be crying out for a striker like Dom Solanke because he's everything they should get and everything they need. And from the outside perception, I think those who don't watch Dom Solanke, I probably would have been the same if I had watched him last year. I wouldn't think too much of him. I think he's a run of a mill championship, lower tier striker, but you see how important he's still to Bournemouth, and he is stepping up from that championship into the Premier League, and I'm so glad he's getting the goals now, and hopefully in the months to come he'll get the recognition from the wider footballing public just how good he is.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about VAR in a moment that John and Aaron touched on. But looking at Southampton, Jacob, they stopped the rot. I think that was a point out of 5. And it was 1-1 against West Ham, took the lead, but then conceded. And tell us more about that draw for Southampton on Saturday.
Yeah, so the first half, they huffed and puffed, went back to how they used to play in terms of being nice and aggressive. They've never had the best quality, that's fair to say, but they've always worked really hard. They've always pressed well, and they've usually won games through hard work. And it looked like they were doing that in the first half. They were, the much better team. They had plenty of chances. Fabianski made some good saves for West Ham. And then in the second half, as they tend to do, they just run out of steam. They look disorganised. Their midfield looks like they're playing different sides of the pitch. It's a complete mess at times. And I think that one thing that they've struggled with, and one thing we'll probably come on to, is Ralph Hasenhüttl's always been well liked with Southampton fans, but he's not anymore. And one of the reasons is obviously results. But I think the biggest reason is they haven't got the identity how they used to play. They used to be a high press front foot. And now in pre-season, Hasenhüttl tried to go with a back 5, similar to Scott Parker. Like Bournemouth, they quickly ditched that as well. And now they're just stuck in limbo. No one really knows what their role is, their aims in the team. And now you're just left with a team that are just fighting from game to game, week to week, just for survival. And it's pretty bland at the moment.
Not many goals, Aaron. Conceded 18 in the relegation zone, but they did get a point. I wasn't surprised that they got a point against West Ham. I felt like West Ham are a bit of a side that are a bit weird to judge at the moment. But, they did stop the rot, but they didn't win. And that's something they're struggling to do this season.
Yeah, I tipped Southampton to be struggling this season. Not just in hope, but in expectation. I did think they would struggle. They did buy a lot of players, some quite exciting youngsters, but they're youngsters. And I was worried about their forward line for them. And they got serious injuries as well. So yeah, he's obviously under a lot of pressure, Hasenhüttl. There are murmurings, obviously, of discontent, or more than that, really. So I'd like to think that we can be the final nail in his coffin, so to speak, because obviously if he was to get a result tomorrow, that might sort of keep him in his seat for a bit. But I would think if they lose to us, little brothers down the road, then that might be the final straw for some. So yeah, it's probably a good time to play them. They've obviously got injuries. I'm sure Jacob will probably talk about their team news in a bit, but I know there are some big players out. But the worry for me is that obviously we have beaten Southampton in some fantastic games in the Premier League, which we can all remember. But on the whole, we do seem to underperform against them in various games. Whether it was the cup game recently, or most games in the Premier League. I don't know if that's a kind of I don't know if we just get a bit of the occasion or whatever it might be, but really tomorrow we should have absolutely nothing to fear. Go for it. But that's my worry. But I'm hopeful. But no, Southampton, I think they are going to struggle for sure.
Stop the rot though, John. And does that change the dynamics tomorrow, knowing that they can pick up results in the Premier League as they head to Dean Court?
I don't know. I think there are enough suspicions that you can generate out of thin air about a team that's not doing well that you don't need them to pick up anything before you sort of go, oh, they haven't won in 5 games, or they're definitely going to win on Saturday or on Wednesday or whatever. No, I don't think it changes too much. I think the interesting for me about Southampton and it's what I was thinking of when we spoke to the we did the round table a little while ago with the Brighton fan and the Everton fan, was Everton's squad seems quite young. A lot of their players seem very young. Arsenal's squad is the youngest on average in the division, but by only slightly ahead of Southampton, who have the second youngest squad in the division. And I was looking and thinking, why was I not worried about Everton and not worried about Arsenal? It's because they've got some really experienced heads there to guide the younger players. Whereas looking at Southampton's squad, their oldest players were Romeo, who's gone. Armstrong is still there, doesn't really play that much. Jack Stevens came to us. Nathan Redmond is gone. El Yunusi wasn't really playing that much over the last few years, as far as I know. And then you've got James Ward-Prowse, who, yes, obviously is the captain. But there's no one to guide the young players. It's great having a lot of young players that have got very little experience. You can build them up. But Southampton always worried me at the start of this season because they don't have that experience along with all the young players that's coming in. And Southampton were inconsistent at the best of times over the last few seasons anyway. So I don't envy Hasenhüttl at all. I think it seems as though they're playing FIFA career mode at the moment, bringing in about a dozen youngsters and thinking we'll just build them up and in 2 years we'll be the best team in the world. And it's just not how things work, unfortunately. I understand the logic behind it, but it's got to be so tough, even as a manager that puts his arms around players, which, as hearing Jacob talk about, is not something that Hasenhüttl does at all.
Right, talk to us then, Jacob, about Ralph. I mean, I feel like Ralph's been on this journey many times before, and just when you think he's on the brink, he goes and wins 5 games in a row and saves his job. Surely he's on borrowed time. I mean, Jon spoke about the squad there and the transformation, but tell us more, because he's surely one loss away in Bournemouth from losing his job.
Yeah, so he's lost 9-0 twice, and this is still the lowest point in his tenure so far. They've got 13 points in 24 games. Only team in the EFL not to keep a clean sheet. The mood inside the camp, in the fan base, is on the floor. The players voiced their concerns to the hierarchy in the summer about Ralph Hasenhüttl, about his man management. In terms of the personnel, like you guys said, 10 new signings came in. All the experienced players went out the door, and you're left with James Ward-Prowse, who is the captain but does far too much, and that's actually now suffering in his own personal form. Shea Adams, he's a perfect foil as a striker, but he's not an out goal scorer. And they've changed the whole backroom staff. They've changed the hierarchy, the way it's ran. They're trying to be a bit more streamlined in their approach, but there's still a bit of vagueness in terms of who actually makes the decisions, who's actually going to be responsible for sacking Ralph at the end of the day. And so everything just seems to be in a state of flux. Like tomorrow, if you ask me to predict the team, I'll probably name you 3 guarantees. There's a number of players who come in and out of the team. Stuart Armstrong and El Yunusi change every week. There just seems to be no stability at the moment. And I think there's a consensus among the fan base now. It's the most I've ever seen. I think 80-90% of people think it's probably the right time to depart with Ralph Hasenhüttl, because he's done an unbelievable job to keep them up for 4 years. But it just feels like it's the end of the cycle now, and everything's grown stale, and it probably will end tomorrow night if they don't win.
Doing my research though, Jacob, and you just spoke about a player there, and you're looking for your experienced heads to try and get the team going. And you look at someone like James Ward-Prowse, who I think got 10 goals.
Yeah.
I don't know how many assists he got, but he got 10 goals last season. I mean, he's sitting on 1 goal and 1 assist after 10 games. And this is a player that was probably on the brink of an England call-up. And, well, he had call-up, but, definitely in with a shout with confirming his status at the World Cup. And if he's not leading, it's going to be difficult for those youngsters to also lead and be at their best. And I'm looking at James Ward-Prowse and think, he's having a bit of a tough season. And you can probably see why Southampton are struggling as well.
I think the weight is too heavy on James Ward-Prowse, and it's no surprise that he is having a difficult season, because he does absolutely everything in that team. He's the one that bridges the gap between coach and staff and the squad away from the pitch. He's the one that leads by example off the pitch. On the pitch, he's the one that takes the free kicks, takes the corners. The only player probably over 25 in the team sometimes, everyone looks at him, and I think that's been accentuated by the absence of Romeo Lavia, who I'm sure we'll come on to, but he's the player that everyone admits inside the club Ralph Hasenhüttl has built the team around. And this is his debut season in Premier League. He's 18 years old. And he's been injured since actually playing against Chelsea in August. And they haven't won a game since. So, Ward-Prowse is in midfield on his own at times. And if you saw Declan Rice's goal for West Ham the other day, it was Ward-Prowse on his own midfield getting 1-2. So I think that just was kind of symbolic in terms of showing how isolated Ward-Prowse is. So yeah, his hands are full, and I don't think he will make the World Cup, sadly, the way it's going. And I think it could force him to eventually leave at some point.
Aaron, someone not under pressure and lapping up the plaudits, but cool, calm and collected, we'll talk about his press conference in a bit, is Gary O'Neill, still unbeaten, and a Bournemouth team now that's been unbeaten since the end of August. The only team in the Premier League, would you believe it? Gary O'Neill doing a fantastic job though, Aaron.
It's an incredible stat, isn't it? With Man City losing on Sunday, it's an incredible stat that we not only gone 6 games unbeaten, but we haven't actually lost since August, and we are, the longest unbeaten run in the Premier League. It's obviously put the mockers on it for tomorrow night now. No, look, he's doing a fantastic job. We've spoken about it. The players are galvanised. They're playing for him. They clearly, Dom Solanke couldn't hide the fact, he's happy for him to get the job. I guess he's going to say that, isn't he? But there does seem to be playing for him, and it's that kind of boot room boy attitude that we got with Tommy Elphick on the, there's the motivator. Sean Cooper is very much the brains behind it from all accounts, and Gary O'Neill is such a highly rated coach, so it's working, and he is doing a brilliant job. There are, as with every manager, there are some question marks around certain approaches. Could we have gone for it more in games and got more points? Possibly. Would we then been picked off? Possibly. So, I think he's played it. You can't knock anything that he's done, to be honest with you. This is the Premier League. This isn't the Championship. And you're up against top players every week. So, yeah, just as I sound like Gary O'Neill here, but one game at a time. I'm fully focused on tomorrow night. And as soon as tomorrow night's out of the way, I'll be fully focused on West Ham. And no other questions. Thank you.
And let's speak about him again, John, because leading by example, leading from the front is Dom Solanke. Does way more than just scoring goals, but 8 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, caused havoc for Fulham in that first half. And a player that's definitely going to help us stay up this season.
Yeah, without a doubt. We're unbeaten in games that he started, because he missed those 3 manic games in that dreadful period against City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and he's such an important focal point to the way that we play at all. It's not like Kiefer Moore can't do a decent job up front, but as we've discussed, Kirk, basically, if you play Kiefer Moore, you have to play Solanke out of position, and Solanke does more for the team. He presses with intensity. Not that Kiefer Moore doesn't actually. He's a very good presser, Kiefer Moore, but Solanke will do that for 90 minutes. He can run the channels, but he can also receive the ball. His dribbling actually hasn't been as good this year in the Championship. I thought his dribbling was really incredible, but it's actually his stats aren't that great at the moment in the Prem, but that's fair enough. The defenders are a lot better. But his accuracy is really good at the moment, which is following up what he did, how he started the Championship season. 5 goal involvements is right up there in terms of, obviously Haaland runs away with everything, but 5 goal involvements is very good for a striker that's only played 7 games. It's been so impressive, and he is so vital to the way we play, and it's just a case of making sure that we actually feed him properly, because he's still kind of feeding off scraps at the moment and basically making goals himself too. Our chance creation is not looking that good right now. Still, we are making the most of it, and what Gary O'Neill is doing a really good job of is keeping the mentality high, keeping the positivity in the ground, keeping the positivity in the team. And although Bournemouth could easily have picked up far fewer points, they could have picked up far more as well. The games have often rested on a knife edge, which is quite familiar, I think, for a lot of Bournemouth fans. But it's going the right way at the moment. And while we have been unlucky in some refereeing decisions in the boxes, we have also ridden our luck a bit with a number of games. So, things could have gone a very different way for Gary O'Neill, but he is doing an incredibly good job at motivating the players and getting them working for him. And long may that continue for as long as we have him as our manager.
Before we move on to the next subject, Jacob, do you have an opinion on that? I mean, I spoke about this on the opening day about Dom Solanke and Philip Billing. Now, I am one of Kiefer Moore's biggest fans, especially after what he did versus Nottingham Forest. But I made a comment even after we won saying if you play Kiefer Moore, you actually take away Dom Solanke and Phil Billing's game because you have to play them out of position. And although they'll do a job, you don't get the best of them. And I said that would catch up with us, and it did very early on. Do you have an opinion on that, not really being able to get Kiefer Moore in from the start because you really want Dom Solanke to play up top and you want Billing to be in that free role?
Yeah, I don't think it's that much of an issue, to be fair, because I think Bournemouth's best games last year came when Dom Solanke and Philip Billing were combining and they were at their best. And if you have Kiefer Moore, I think he's not the type of striker that's going to stretch him behind. So I think he'll clog up the space where Dom likes to drop deep into that false nine position where Philip Billing likes to roam as well. So it all becomes pretty congested. So I don't think there's an issue with Kiefer Moore. I think you can make 5 subs now. So and he offers something different. It gives you a direct threat. And Southampton, for example, if he comes on tomorrow, they're notoriously bad at defending back posts. So Kiefer Moore's a great option to come on off the bench and lurk in that area and potentially exploit it.
Right. I gave you clue 1 at the start of the show. And let's go back to guess the player. So if you just joined us throughout the stream, we're going to be guessing a player that's got a link between Bournemouth and Southampton. So your first clue was that this player has played for both AFC Bournemouth and Southampton. Clue 2, this player has also played for Norwich City and has England under 21 appearances. Okay, so I'll leave that on the screen for a moment. And those are your
We're not allowed
clues.
to guess, right?
Not yet. So I'll ask you at the end if you think you've got the player. So clue 1, clue 2 are out, and you can get involved in the chat later on at the end of the stream. Right. I don't want to spend too long on this, guys, but I feel like we need to talk about it again. We've got a journalist in the room, VAR, Jacob. Now, they say it goes around, you get some, you lose some, you win some. Feels like we're losing an awful lot at the moment. Look, Lerma handballs at Newcastle, doesn't know anything about it, but he stops the ball going in the box. But if you're an Arsenal defender and your arm's out and about, it doesn't count. On Saturday, Fredericks is clearly pulled back. And if you look at the rule book, it says that they don't want to give away soft penalties. But then in the Manchester-Liverpool, Haaland has a small tug, and you might say that's soft, but that's okay. We'll disallow a goal. I've gone past the point, Jacob, of whether they're penalties, not penalties, whether they're fouls, whether they're not fouls. It's the inconsistency. And I'm getting to the point now where I think we just need to drop VAR, maybe just leave it for offsides. Goal line technology works. But this, I thought, was meant to take out all these problems, and it's adding more than before it was even here. As a journalist, do you have a view on VAR? Because I know as Bournemouth fans, we feel like we've probably lost out on about 6 points now.
Yeah. I've never liked VAR. I've always liked that. I always thought that luck will balance out throughout the season, and it's human error really, and I think you should just accept it. But the terrible thing is, I'm probably just used to VAR now. It's been 3-4 seasons. Obviously, Bournemouth were in the Championship last year, so coming back to a bit of a kind of shock in a way. But I'm used to it, and it just feel like, especially if you support a team, all the VAR decisions go against you at once. I remember when Southampton lost in that run where they lost 9-0 to Man United, and I think there's 3 VAR decisions that day that could have been a difference between losing 9-0 and only losing 5-2. So they all just seem to go against you at once. But I like to think, and hopefully for Bournemouth's sake, that things will even out eventually. But yeah, you're right. I think it's a very robotic, stale, and convoluted way to play football.
Aaron, we spoke to Mark Halsey, wasn't it? Before the season started, ex-referee, and he just said that it can work. It needs to just be worked better with the people that are controlling it. But it's getting worse, in my opinion, and it is frustrating. It's a great point on Saturday, but it could have been free.
Yeah, look, I mean, the biggest issue I have with it, and a lot of people might share it, is when it's used for subjectivity, like when it's used on subjection. So offside is black and white, right? Whether it's a toenail, whatever it is, if it's offside, it's offside. Obviously, goal line technology existed anyway. When you get to fouls, you get to red cards, it's subjective. And quite clearly, it's been demonstrated that different people have different opinions. Some referees, I was listening to Mike Riley the other night, who disagreed with someone was trying to defend something, and then another referee was saying, actually, no, what you're talking about. If you're getting to that stage, then just let the referee make the decision in the first place. The often said things about VAR, it's ruining the beautiful game. We've managed without it for 100 years. it's taking the joy out of football, to celebrations, etc. It all rings true, and it is, for me, ruining the game, and it's not making a positive difference, which is what it should be there for. So whether it's VAR or it's how VAR is interpreted, obviously, because VAR is just the cameras ultimately. It's how it's interpreted, and the people who are interpreting it are just really making a hash of it. So for me, subjective decisions are always going to be just that. They're going to be subjective. And how do you measure consistency in that?
John, before VAR, we'd be in a pub. Well, we wouldn't because we didn't know each other, but we'd be in a pub and we'd be playing a game of pool. And there'd be a decision and they'd show highlights in the Premier League highlights. And we would have a debate about it, whether it was a pen, not a pen. But we then agreed that the referee's human and he made the decision within a split second. The problem is now we're having the same debates and conversations, but you've got 3 or 4 people around video footage and they're still making mistakes. That's what I can't get my head around.
Yeah, I think Aaron set that up nicely. Is just the fact that I think I would have wanted, if the option was there for it to just be for offsides and goal line technology and they didn't use it for anything else, I would be totally behind that, because I do feel as though if a line has to be drawn and it can be black and white, you might as well get that decision right every time. And hopefully with the World Cup introducing the automated system, hopefully that comes in, is perfect, and it completely cuts down on the amount of times that we're waiting 5 minutes for an offside call to be made on VAR. But with subjective ones, yeah, I totally agree. And the really silly thing about it is the fact that we all know that referees will treat different games differently, and the same referee might not even referee a second game the way he does the first game. So subjectivity rockets like you wouldn't believe between games. And when you see decisions that are so incredibly similar between a different set of matches, even within the same game week, that's what's so incredibly frustrating for fans. I think that you can implement VAR and you can do it in a better way by introducing a challenge system. Now, you don't have to. You can just scrap VAR and you just use it for the black and white decisions. And I think that would actually be a positive movement at this point. But how many times have we seen things that are changed or overturned when there has been no call by a player nearby? It was the Man City game in the Champions League. Mahrez's goal, Mahrez accidentally handballs it, and it drops down to someone who passes it. Brilliant finish from Rodri, and no one had challenged anything. VAR picked up that it might have brushed his hand, and so they ruled it out. And I think that there are situations like that where I think that just doesn't need to be changed. If no one's challenging anything and the referee doesn't spot it, then you just move on. And things that there are enough subjective decisions that you want to restrict those to as minimal amount as possible. And if a referee misses something blatant, then you do want it to be changed. This is the only reason we want it. If something is incredibly obvious that 99% of people are going to agree that the referee got it wrong because he couldn't see the right angle, then things need to be changed. And in which case, then you shall have the option that a player says, no, ref, you missed that, please check it. Or the management team can say that or something like that. But we want it to be used as a limited amount of time as possible. And at the moment, the referee isn't refereeing games. He's relying on VAR to pick up the things that he misses, or just goes, that might have been a penalty, but actually I'm not sure, so I'll let the VAR guys check it. And in the end, you get things like the Callum Wilson penalty in the Newcastle game against Man United. Absolute blatant penalty. One of the most Stonewall penalties you'll see all season, not given. And that's because the referee has gone, I'm not sure, I'll let VAR do it. And somehow the referee or the VAR has decided that it's not a clear and obvious error, which is a ridiculous phrase they need to stop using. So, yeah, there are ways you can improve VAR. And there is a way I do believe VAR can work. I think technology can be useful, but the human implementation at the moment is shoddy, and that needs to change.
And this is going to keep going round and round and round. I'm convinced of that. But we're going to continue with this match preview. Make sure you subscribe if you are new to Cherries Red Army. Appreciate all of you currently watching and anyone checking out this video. And please hit the like button. We'd also like to give a shout out to our monthly members. We also had Mark and Bev join our monthly members this week. Thank you to you. And anyone who's donated recently, thank you very much. You can become a member or donate at buymeacoffee.com/Cherries Red Army. And if you do donate or become a member in October, there are opportunities for you to win prizes. This month, we will be giving away a scarf and a Dean Court Street sign, which is courtesy of our sponsors, Aquashine Exteriors. Now, Jacob, you were on your way to the presser for Southampton this morning, I think. So tell us a bit about that. I'm going to show you Southampton's lineup from the weekend. How much different will this be tomorrow night?
Yeah, so the first huge absentee, really, given how good he's been this season, is Armel Bella Kotchap. He's only 20, made his German debut against England early this month. He's out. He dislocated his shoulder in the first half against West Ham. So I imagine Duje Saleta-Sarr, who they signed from Marseille, will come in his place. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is a big one. I've touched on James Ward-Prowse not having a midfield partner with Romeo Lavia injured. He's been okay, Maitland-Niles, but he's nowhere near or offers the same type of impact that Lavia does, or even Ora Romeo, who left as well this summer. So I think there could be a bit of change. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Ibrahima Diallo comes back in. And Theo Walcott, he was ill on the weekend, but I had a text just before the game that he was actually supposed to start the game had it not been for illness. And that would have been his first start since, I think it was last November. He's not played more than 5 minutes for over 8 months. So he's well out of the picture, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and Arsenal will need a striker. So maybe he could be the guy that comes up with the goals tomorrow.
Is he a striker? Is he a winger? I mean, Arsene Wenger never really knew. He used to play him in different positions, but there we go. For Bournemouth's presser, though, Aaron, Gary O'Neill, as we spoke about, was in good spirits. He spoke about Joe Rothwell now being in the squad and ready to hit the ground running. Yes, Joe Rothwell, I said, was on the bench, and Junior Stanislas. And no sort of injury concerns off the back of the weekend. So a healthy squad, he said.
Yeah, apparently so. You never know, obviously, what surprises will come up, but hopefully that is the case. And it does, as you said, reinforces, it gives them some decisions to make, which is actually probably a healthy position to be in. We'll come on to the team lineup predictions soon, and there might be a couple of tweaks, but the squad, it's always good to have Stanislas available. For me, he's still one of the most quality players we have in our squad if we can keep him fit. Rothwell, I'm excited about. I think he's someone who we know can carry the ball at speed. And try and dictate the middle of the park, whether he's playing off the left or whatever. This gives us some more options going forward. And Ben Pearson's back as well, player who obviously I'm very, very fond of, who for me is always worth a place on the bench for various reasons. So yeah, it definitely adds to our options. And sounds like everyone's raring to go in good spirits, and hopefully some consistency in our lineup, if not in the Saints lineup at least.
Healthy squad, though, John, does mean that some miss out. And someone who missed out at the weekend was Jamal Lowe. And these type of players are going to struggle to get football in the Premier League when we've got this healthy squad.
True, but I mean, that would have been the case even when we were back in the division, for those 5 years before as well. And it's the case with the majority of teams that you will have third, fourth, fifth fiddle players that just aren't going to get a look in without injuries. And Jamal Lowe kind of always fit in that bracket. You've got the same thing about Emiliano Marcondes, although he's probably more likely to feature on the bench generally through the season. And it's just the case that Lowe just doesn't provide as much as most of the other players. Even you would say Siriki Dembele, I would argue, is definitely ahead of him in the pecking order in terms of winger, whereas Jamal Lowe is an option both out wide and up front. Marcondes, I think, has been very unfortunate to barely play for the Cherries since his first sort of 8-game run in the Championship at the start of that season. But yeah, sorry, someone at the door. So yeah, you're always going to get those kinds of players. But it is fortunate at least that we have at least certainly definitely a good fresh first 18 to have, or first 20, 19, I guess, to put on the bench as well as the starting 11. The thing about Bournemouth, as sort of I think I twigged a bit more when talking to some other fans, is that I'm very confident on our first 11 being strong enough. I'm less confident that if we get a few injuries that we're going to be able to survive at all, and past maybe the first 3 or 4 players off the bench. we've looked. I think we've all looked at our bench earlier on in the season. We had a few injuries and gone, God, there is just no one to make a difference here. Is there to bring off the bench? Whereas I think we're a little bit more confident at the moment, particularly with the likes of Stanislas and Rothwell coming back in. So it's a good thing to what depth we do have. It's very important that we have as an option to bring on and make a difference in a match.
Does take us nicely onto the predicted 11, and I'll get your thoughts early on, Jacob. And what we'll do is show on the screen the squad that started against Fulham. So it was Neto in goal, Fredericks right back, Mepham, Senesi, Smith left back. Then we had Lewis Cook, Lerma, Tavernier, Billing, Christie, and Solanke. Now, with Ralph looking at this lineup and doing his homework from the weekend, seeing Smith at left back, are you surprised that Jordan Zamora has been taken out of this side? But with the experience that Smith's put into this Bournemouth team lately and that pace and threat that Fredericks holds, Jacob, do you see that changing tomorrow night? Do you see an unchanged team, though, potentially? I think I do.
I think it might be a little bit difficult. Obviously, Fredericks just come back from injury, hasn't he, as well? So playing in back-to-back games, I think could be a little bit dicey. I think Jordan Zamora, I think he has the potential to, maybe kill Southampton, because Southampton's right side has been really, really poor. And that's uncharacteristically because Kyle Walker-Peters is usually, very, very good at that position. But if you looked at all the goals this season that Southampton conceded, it all comes down that side. So I think a little bit more thrust, having that left-footed balance of Zamora would probably be more conducive to Gary O'Neill tomorrow night. But when I look at that team, I see a lot of similarities in terms of player profile to last year, in terms of that left-footed centre-back in Senesi, Adam Smith in the big games going over to left back, Ryan Christie restored back to his right wing position, and Tavernier was a surprise one for me because he, by all counts, he's signed as a left wing back for Scott Parker, and he's been given a bit more attacking license this season. So I think I really like the look of that team, and it's great to see Chris Mepham stepping up. I'm really, really pleased to see that as well.
Back-to-back games in quick time, Aaron. Do you think potentially Jaden Anthony comes in for Tavernier? I thought he had probably one of his weakest games on Saturday, apart from his early contribution, and he's still not had an assist and goal yet. And Anthony's biting at the bit, and he's done well for Bournemouth when he's come off the bench. Do you expect a change there with this being a midweek game?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, Tavernier for me is very similar to Christie in that their off the ball is unbelievable. The work ethic they put in, the recovery runs, and he does bring the team up the pitch as well. So he's been a brilliant favourite of mine this season to have. But I'm wondering whether there will be a couple of tweaks and two players we've already mentioned. I think. Obviously Adam Smith was brought in to do a job in James Maddison, and I was a little surprised when I saw the lineup against Fulham, thinking Jay-Z would be back. But then having watched that game, Adam Smith was so good, so good. He just he just did his job wherever he was. He was one of my man of the matches actually. So I think we could go unchanged, but I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow, as Jacob alluded to, that Ryan Fredericks is partial to a little injury. And he has been really good for us, and I wouldn't want to risk that with midweek game. So we could easily put Adam Smith to right back and Jay-Z to left back, clearly, and that will give us an extra thrust going forward. And then potentially, because of that, we could see Jaden Anthony come in for Tavernier and get the old partnership back at home. And because Jaden Anthony, I think he has looked bright every time he's come off the bench, and perhaps deserves a start. Not that Tavernier deserves to be dropped at all, in my opinion, but just freshen it up just a little bit down the left-hand side. But that would all I would see is changing, if anything, either an unchanged or one or both of those players, maybe maximum. But I would be happy either way.
On the last preview, John, that's what we did predict for Jordan Zamora to come in. I put him in there again. Smith over to the right. Some good points made about Fredericks potentially having a rest. Do you expect Anthony to come in for Tavernier? Tavernier is very fit, though, as a footballer, as we know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do believe that Zamora will come back in for Fredericks, just because, as was mentioned by Aaron, that Fredericks with his injury record, Jacob I think mentioned as well, with Fredericks only coming back with his injury record, you might want to rest him up. Smith is a lot more reliable in that regard, and I do think that if you're not going to be playing Smith on the left purely to deal with a player like Maddison, I don't think there's any reason not to put Zamora back in, who's defensively much better than we all thought he would be, based on how we thought he'd start at the beginning of that championship season. Tavernier was interesting, actually. I had no idea he pulled off 6 tackles in the game against Fulham. I thought his defensive contributions fell off a cliff in the second half of that match. I think they did, but he obviously did really well beforehand. I think that's the most of any Bournemouth player in one match this season. So his defensive contribution was incredible. I think dealing very well with Jacob Tanswell from right wing back against Fulham, really, really going up well against him. The one thing that worries me just a little bit, because I was just scrolling through FBref, just looking for some stats to pull out that are interesting. Smith's record at dealing with dribblers is not great this season. He's been dribbled past 15 times this season. No one out of our back line has been dribbled past more than 4 times. So he has a weakness for people that really run at him. I mean, I think that for the first Arsenal goal, you look at him absolutely doing nothing to stop Jesus was an indication of what he's done so far this season with dribblers, although I do appreciate his defensive contribution. And while we don't have many dribblers in our team, Southampton have quite a few from looking at their stats. So that does worry me a little bit, or at least they're more likely to go and try and dribble at you a bit more, because in comparison to us, the dribbling stats look off the charts, and I don't even think they're that high for the league. Yeah, that one's going to be an interesting one. The one thing I would look at is it's going to be an important job for whoever plays at left mid, or actually no. Which side, Jacob? Which side is Walker Peters playing at the moment?
He now plays right back with obviously Livramento injured. He was playing left back.
Yeah, because he can play either side really. But certainly Walker Peters is probably Southampton's most important player. I mean, certainly Jacob was ranting on about him so much over the last season and a half. I put him straight in my fantasy team, and he's got me absolutely nothing all season.
Don't trust a Southampton defender, John.
One time he got a decent return. I had him on the bench. Yeah, he carries the ball so much for Southampton. He's so important in pulling them up that right-hand side of the pitch. Certainly left-hand side previously, it'll be right-hand side now. So whoever plays at left mid is going to be incredibly important. And this is where I think O'Neill, as much as when we put Smith to left back to deal with Maddison, I kind of thought a bit like, Leicester are there to go at. Do we have to necessarily try and set up to counter every team we play? In the end, it worked out brilliantly, and I think O'Neill has actually done a really good job so far of doing his best to try and nullify the opponent while still getting the drags of creativity from the rest of the team that he can. So I expect him to try and put someone in left mid, particularly to try and deal as much as possible with Walker Peters. That could well be Christie be put over to that left-hand side. If it is, I'd imagine it's probably going to be Tavernier put to the right. It might be Anthony. I think Anthony's okay at the right, but he's definitely much better on the left, combining with Zamora. So that's probably going to be an interesting one for me when the lineup comes out and the first whistle goes. Who's playing at left mid to try and deal with Walker Peters?
Someone will be put at left mid tomorrow, and we'll find out who it will be an hour before kickoff. And that's our predicted 11. We'll just make the one change on this match preview. We expect Jordan Zamora to come back into this side, just like we thought he might do for Fulham. We're going to get your score predictions in the chat in a moment. Just hold fire as I give you your third clue and final clue for Guess the Player, guys. All right. So your first clue was this player has played for both AFC Bournemouth and Southampton. Clue 2, this player has also played for Norwich City and has England under-21 appearances. And clue 3, this player is left-footed. Okay, I'm going to get your responses in a moment. I'll leave that on the screen. But what we will do now, guys, is actually get your match predictions, your score predictions in the chat. This is your 60-second, a minute and a half warning. So let us know what you think the score will be tomorrow night as we look at the other Premier League fixtures and the table, and we'll see if the guys have got Guess the Player correct. Time for those score predictions in the chat. Let's have a look at the rest of the Premier League fixtures that are going on. Currently, I think it is Brighton 0, Nottingham Forest 0. That's done well for Nottingham Forest at the moment. They're not conceded a goal. It's Crystal Palace 0, Wolves 1. Bournemouth Southampton tomorrow at 7:30. Correct there, actually. I think I might put 7:45 in the banner. So correction, 7:30 kickoff. Liverpool versus West Ham. Brentford versus Chelsea. Newcastle take on Everton. Man United take on Tottenham. Fulham against Aston Villa. And Leicester against Leeds. Any other games that tickle your fancy there, Jacob?
I do like the Man United Tottenham one tomorrow. I think that's going to be really interesting. But of course, I think any neutral should be watching Bournemouth Southampton, because I think every game I've seen between Bournemouth and Southampton has been fantastic. I remember going to the one in lockdown, the 2-0 one with Ings and Che Adams, and I thought it was a really, really good game, really competitive game. And obviously, if Sam Surridge scored and VAR did it, then maybe Bournemouth didn't have to go down. But yeah, really looking forward to that one.
Premier League table. Bournemouth are in the top 10. Bear with me, just need to scroll down. There we go. Southampton are 18th. And look at that form guide for Southampton there. Let's hope that continues as those score predictions go into the chat. Right, I'm going to come around the room. You've had your 3 clues. And you can let us know in the chat as well if you want to guess the player of those 3 clues. So, Jacob, who do you think we are talking about? Guess the player on this match preview.
I think it is Andrew Sermon.
You think it's Andrew Sermon. Aaron, who do you think we are talking about?
Oh, it's definitely George Lawrence. No, it's not. Sorry. It's Andrew Sermon for me as well.
Andrew Sermon as well. And I saw it on your phone there, John. Are you thinking it's Andrew Sermon?
Yep, it says.
It says. Let's just see if anyone's put any predictions. They're putting the score predictions in there. Whoever's gone for Shane Long. Not left-footed, though. Amanda's gone for Sermon. David Codron's gone for Sermon. Chris Hubble's gone for Sermon. And I've been criticised earlier on in this season on these match previews for Guess a Player for them being too easy. And I can reveal that the player we're talking about is Ryan Bertrand. So just out of nowhere.
It did fit Andrew Sermon as well, though, didn't it?
It did.
Ryan Bertrand played for Norwich.
He did.
You put that up there specifically because you thought we would go straight for Andrew Sermon as soon as we mentioned Norwich.
So
does that all apply to Andrew Sermon as well, though? So it was the player you were thinking about was Ryan Bertrand.
Sort of does, but I actually had Ryan Bertrand just to trick you. But it does all apply to Andrew Sermon if you got it right as well. But I just wanted to play a little bit of a game with everyone because you've been winding me up that these have been too easy. So, yes, if you put Andrew Sermon, you can have it. But that was Ryan Bertrand that I was actually talking about. Okay, there's a bit of fun for you. Right, we have got in the chat for the score predictions, as John's laughing away, that I'm going to go with my score predictions to start with, actually, guys. I am feeling like we do need to beat Southampton again because we didn't. Last time we beat them, 2016, I think, Afobe at home, 2-0. I think was the last time we beat them at home. We beat them away, obviously, at St Mary's, the 3-1. And I feel like the famous Cherries Red Army 3-1 is going to come out the bag tomorrow. It's going to be goals galore again. I think Southampton, Jacob, have conceded in every game this season.
Yeah, the only team in the EFL not to keep a clean sheet.
So definitely going to score a goal tomorrow. I'm going for 3-1. Ready for later, 3-1. John's just put that on the screen. Right, John, what's your score prediction before I get some score predictions from the chat?
I am going to be uncharacteristically positive in this one. I think I'm normally quite hedging my bets against most stuff. Although, to be fair, Kirk, we have been pretty good at calling the draws against Fulham and Brentford. And I think we went for it against Wolves as well. So, however, this time around, I do think Saints are definitely there for the taking. Their form isn't great. Their confidence is clearly low. And you know, it's one of the rare occasions where Bournemouth might have a chance of actually having more possession than our opponent because we haven't done that at all yet this season. Mind you, Saints have only managed it once themselves. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. I think I'm confident our defence will hold up and I think we will get a couple goals.
Mark Singleton's gone for a 2-1 to the Cherries. Mark Cole has also gone with Mark Singleton's score prediction. Chris Hubble has gone for a Bournemouth home win, 4-0. Amanda's also in for 2-1. Nick Osborne is going with John's 2-0. And also David from Australia, 2-0. And Dan Chase, 2-0. We'll get some more score predictions from the chat in a moment. Aaron, what's your score prediction?
I've got some bad news for you guys. Me and the boys have been to 7 games this season. And we have missed out on 3 games this season. And the 3 games we missed out on were Arsenal, City and Liverpool. So, and we will not be there tomorrow night, I'm sorry to say, simply because of school and obviously living quite far away. So, so based on that basis, we're going to lose. But in all seriousness, I really do feel confident for tomorrow night. I think, barring the Southampton thing aside, we've got to go at them. And I think we will win 2-1 tomorrow night.
2-1. And that's exactly what Gene thinks as well. Cameron also going for 2-1. Heather's going for a clean sheet 3-0. Jacob, we're coming to you very, very soon. 3-1 to the Cherries. More sermons coming in. Yep, you can have it. No problem. But it's definitely not Shane Long. And if there's any more score predictions coming your way, I will let you know. Did Sermon play for England? Yes, 4 appearances for the England under-21s, and Morgan's going for 2-1. Should have said that actually in the guesser player. Should have said that I think Bertrand had 17 appearances for England. Maybe that would have changed the situation. But Jacob, coming to you for a Bournemouth-Southampton score prediction tomorrow night at Dean Court in the Premier League.
I feel quite uneasy about this because Southampton on the absolute ropes, and in theory, for the first time, Bournemouth should be a favourite heading into the game. But we all know Bournemouth thrive on being the underdog, so I am quite surprised by everyone's being so optimistic about it. So I think Southampton, as Hensman was showing throughout his tenure, he will pull something out of the bag when you least expect it. So, but I don't think he'll win. I think it'll be 2-2, a 2-all draw, and whether that's enough for Hensman to keep his job, probably not.
Oh, that will be interesting to see. Also, a message in here, and I did get one on Twitter, so I did think I would get this a shout out for tomorrow. So big shout out to Hope for Food, who will be at the Vitality Stadium from 5:30. Any food donations, soft drinks, toiletry donations will be very much appreciated. There you go. Make sure you do help if you're at the Vitality Stadium, Dean Court, tomorrow for that. Really enjoyed this match preview though. John, thank you very much. That's another preview down, and now it's over to the lads to get the job done tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. Staying positive. I'll be watching. I'll be keeping on top of things from home, as per usual. But I'm looking forward to coming down to Bournemouth in a week's time, and hopefully be able to catch up with a few of you then. Best of luck to the lads tomorrow, and everyone going as well. Keep that noise coming.
Drop me a message when that happens, John and Aaron. You can't make the game tomorrow because of school for the kids, but you'll be catching the game where you can as well. Thanks for coming on this match preview, as always.
Yeah, pleasure as always. Looking forward to it.
And Jacob, it's been great to see you again. I've actually been looking forward to this match preview, hoping you'd pick up the call. You did. You got back to me straight away and said, absolutely, I'll come on. It's been great to see you. I hope you have a good evening tomorrow, enjoying the game and doing what you've got to do. And make sure you come and say hi in your return fixture as well.
Will do. I've always wanted to come back on here. I've always wanted to come back on here, and I'm just glad that you invited me back. But yes, it's the game I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, seeing everyone. So say hello if you see me tomorrow. It should be great.
Thanks all from Amanda. Great to see Jacob back. We miss your content. Absolutely well done. And thank you for any more messages. Thank you to our sponsors, Aquashine Exteriors. Thank you to our monthly members. Thank you to John, Aaron and Jacob and all you, the fans, for checking out this match preview. Tomorrow night, one team under Gary O'Neill are looking to go to dizzy heights, maybe top 6 potentially, if results go our way. On the other side, is Ralph in trouble come 10 o'clock tomorrow? Thanks for checking out this preview. We'll see you on the next one. From all of us, up the Cherries.
Up the Cherries.